Alcatraz is sometimes referred to as a prison systems prison, which means that it's a place that you send inmates who cannot be managed or contained in other prisons, also called a supermax prison. When someone breaks society's rules, you send them to prison. Where do you send someone who breaks prison's rules? You send them to Alcatraz. One type of inmate that would have been sent to Alcatraz would have been escape-prone inmates, literally inmates who other prisons could not contain. Alcatraz was said to be escape-proof, and while it is true that we cannot confirm a successful escape, there were plenty of attempts. Think about this. Alcatraz was advertised as escape-proof to inmates who had a history of escaping prisons, jails, and other law enforcement pursuits. Of course they were going to test the escape-proof claim. It would be like putting a 100-ounce steak in front of a group of competitive eaters and telling them that it was impossible to eat that steak. Of course they were going to look at it like a challenge. The natural features of Alcatraz are what made it escape-proof. The cold water and the strong current would have been the dominant deterrents to a successful escape. In 1926, when Alcatraz was still operated by the U.S. military, Commandant Colonel G. Maury Krall responded to a planned mass escape by quipping, "Go ahead, swim." Suffice it to say, no attempt was made that day. With water temperatures of 58 degrees and currents moving at around 7 miles per hour, many inmates would reconsider attempting to escape, but even with those factors, a few would brave the water in a desperate attempt to get off the rock. In the 29-year history of USP Alcatraz, there were 14 escape attempts. In this video, I will briefly describe 12 of those. The other two will be covered in individual videos because of how unique they are compared to the others. On the map, I've marked the general area of the different escape attempts with the numbers here. So let's start with escape attempt number 1. Right over here, April 27th, 1936, Joseph Bowers climbed over a fence in full view of the guard. He didn't make it very far before he was shot and killed. Escape attempt number 2 occurred on December 16th, 1937. This was the last time Ralph Rowe or Theodore Cole were ever seen. They sawed through a window bar in the Model Industries building, squeezed through it, and disappeared. The federal government considers them missing but presumed drowned. Escape attempt number 3 occurred on May 23, 1938. James Lucas, or Jimmy Lucas, if you remember from the last video covering Al Capone, Jimmy Lucas was the inmate who stabbed Al Capone. Jimmy Lucas, Thomas Limerick, and Rufus Franklin armed themselves with a hammer from the furniture shop in the Model Industries building. They clubbed an officer to death, then made an assault on the gun tower on top of the building. The guard in the tower killed Limerick and wounded Franklin. Lucas was captured. Escape attempt number 4, over here, occurred on January 13th, 1939. Notorious inmate Arthur Doc Barker, Dale Stamphill, Rufus McCain, and William Martin, and Henry Young sawed through window bars in D Block, scrambled to the water's edge. Barker was fatally wounded, and the others were captured. Escape attempt number 5, May 21st, 1941. Inmates Joseph Kretzer, Sam Shockey, Arnold Kyle, and Lloyd Bartdale overpowered guards in the mat shop, but gave up after an unsuccessful attempt to saw through the window bars. Escape attempt number 6 occurred on September 15th, 1941. John Bayless made a one-man escape attempt when he slipped away from the garbage detail near the powerhouse. He was spotted in the water and brought back. Escape attempt number 7 occurred on April 14th, 1943. Floyd Hamilton, Harold Brest, Fred Hunter, and James Borman jumped guards in the Model Industries building and broke through a rear window. All 4 were spotted swimming. Borman was fatally wounded. Brest and Hunter were picked up by the prison launch. Hamilton was found 2 days later hiding in a cave. Escape attempt number 8, over here in the New Industries building, occurred on August 7th, 1943. Ted Walters sneaked out of the laundry, climbed over the fence. He was found entering the bay with 2 large cans tied around his waist for buoyancy, brought back to the island. Escape attempt number 9 occurred on July 31st, 1945. John Giles had collected an entire Army uniform during 8 years of working on the dock. He stripped off the coveralls that concealed the uniform and walked on to the Army launch. A precautionary count taken on the boat revealed they had an extra man. He was brought back to the island. So escape attempt number 10 will be the first in attempt that I cover in a separate video. This occurred on May 2nd, 1946. It's referred to as the Battle of Alcatraz, and it takes place in the cell block here. So we'll talk about that later. Escape attempt number 11 occurred on July 23rd, 1956. Floyd Wilson disappeared from the dock crew, and he hid in a crevice in the rocks down here. He worked his way along the seawall, eluding search parties for 12 hours before being discovered. Escape attempt number 12 occurred over here on September 29th, 1958. After tying a guard to a tree, Clyde Johnson and Aaron Burgett ran from the garbage detail to the shoreline. After 2 hours, Johnson was found clinging to the seawall. Burgett was missing for 13 days before his body was discovered in the bay. Escape attempt number 13 is the most infamous escape from Alcatraz. It occurred on June 11th, 1962, and is often referred to as the Great Escape from Alcatraz. That will be the second attempt that I cover in a separate video. And then finally, escape attempt number 14 occurred on December 16th, 1962. This marked the last escape attempt and the only known successful swim from Alcatraz to the mainland. John Paul Scott and Darrell Parker sawed through the bars in the basement room of the kitchen. Using inflated gloves poked into their clothes for extra buoyancy, they jumped in and swam. Parker gave up and turned back. Scott was found clinging to rocks near the Golden Gate Bridge, too exhausted to pull himself out of the water. So that's just a kind of a real rough description of the escape attempts. Again, I will talk about 10 and 13 in the next 2 videos.